It started because of two reasons. One is technology. The internet led to the decline of advertising for print newspapers, and it changed how you can watch the news as we had a proliferation of outlets. So you had conservatives watching conservative media, you had liberals watching liberal media, and newspapers had no more money. The only way they got money was from from their subscribers. And so they didn't want to alienate their subscribers, unlike an advertiser who wanted you to appeal broadly to the entire country. So you had to be mindful of staying somewhat sensible and accurate. Now you could let it rip.
I'm Dave Rubin, and joining me today is a former White House press secretary, a Fox News contributor, and author of the new book, I've got it in my hand right now, Suppression, Deception, Snobbery, and Bias, Why the Press Gets So Much Wrong and Just Doesn't Care. Ari Fleischer, welcome to the Rubin Report.
Dave, thank you for having me.
Ari, I feel like you wrote this book for me personally, because this basically gets to the heart of everything that I do, every hour that I spend working on this show, that the media is sort of a bigger problem than almost anything else at the moment. But before we dive into the book, you have a really interesting backstory and all that stuff. How did you get involved in politics? What eventually got you to the White House? And then we'll get into all this stuff.
Well, to put it in a nutshell, it was totally an accident. I graduated from college. I moved home to play baseball, and a friend of mine had a brother who was managing a congressional race. They needed a press secretary. I knew nothing, and I got the job, which tells you how little you need to know to be a press secretary. And I fell in love with politics. We lost. It was 1982. Reagan stayed the course. Only one Republican challenger won that cycle. But I got the bug. I moved to Washington. I was unemployed, and I got a job as a press secretary to a New York congressman, and that began a 16-year career on Capitol Hill, followed by the Bush campaign, where I moved to Texas in 1999, and then the White House.
Do you miss being in the thick of the political madness?
No.
Nothing? Is there nothing you miss about it?
I spent 21 wonderful years in Washington, and I loved every one of the days I was there, and especially at the White House and when I was communications director of the Ways and Means Committee after Republicans took control of the House. Tremendous excitement and satisfaction. But I was never a Washington for life type. So one day you just know your day has come, it's time to go. And it hit me after 21 long years. So I loved it. I loved standing at that podium, Dave, at the White House. Mm-hmm. I loved taking heat. I loved catching the curveballs, the fastballs, and standing my ground on behalf of a president and a person who I really believe in. And that's what it's about. If you believe deeply, Washington is the town to be in, and then go back home.
Believe it or not, I watched many of those press conferences that you were doing back then. They were sort of must-see TV, and this will sort of segue us a little bit to the book. Correct me if I'm wrong. The media treats Republican press secretaries and Republican administrations a little bit different than Democrat press secretaries and administrations. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I just caught friendly softballs from the White House press corps. You know, they love conservatives, they love Bush. Look, the truth is, as much as things have changed since I was press secretary 20 years ago, and they have changed a lot, they've gotten a lot worse and nastier. Fact is, right now, Peter Doocy is really, from Fox News, the only one of those 49 seats asking hard questions to the Biden press secretary. When I was press secretary, there were 49 seats asking me hard questions. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. The press takes sides, and they did back then. But back then, David, it was more just your liberal conservative bias. Reporters still thought their job at the end of the day was be objective and tell the news fair and not give their opinions on the air. Today, you watch CNN, you watch almost every show, and they think their job is to give opinions. And that's what they do, and it's killing journalism.
So when do you think that started? Because I think anyone watching this, they get it. That's what I spend most of my show doing at this point, is debunking a lot of the nonsense that CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, that they're putting out as fact, when if you just read the headline with a little more precision, you will see that it actually is opinion.
Yeah, absolutely right. Look, it started because of two reasons. One is technology. The internet led to the decline of advertising for print newspapers, and it changed how you can watch the news as we had a proliferation of outlets. So you had conservatives watching conservative media, you had liberals watching liberal media, and newspapers had no more money. The only way they got money was from their subscribers. And so they didn't want to alienate their subscribers, unlike an advertiser who wanted you to appeal broadly to the entire country. So you had to be mindful of staying somewhat sensible and accurate. Now you could let it rip. And then along came more social media, Twitter and other places where reporters felt really good giving their opinions. They didn't value objectivity anymore. They wanted them Twitter followers. They wanted the praise of Hollywood actors and actresses when they let their opinion rip. Hence Jim Acosta at CNN, John Harwood at CNN. Daytime reporters who don't report. They opine, and always from a far left point of view, anti-Trump, anti-Republican. And then the other factor was Trump. When Trump emerged, the press somehow made the decision to save the republic. They decided that the American people erred in 2016 by not electing Hillary, and the press was going to fix the mistake. So these snobs put themselves in a position superior to the people and said, collusion is probably how come Trump won. The Steele dossier is credible, and we're going to put Trump in the country through years of misery to make the case against him. And, as I write in the book, they didn't put just their finger on the scale. They put their writing hand on the scale, and many of them put their entire bodies on the scale. And this is the mainstream media today. And that's why I wrote the book, David. This is why I blow the whistle on the press. I try to be fair. I will always call the balls and strikes. I supported President Trump on policy pretty much all the time. I regularly tweeted that I objected to his behavior. When he tweeted something I thought went too far and was offensive, I called him on it. But when I saw the coverage of Donald Trump, how biased, unfair, get Trump, if it was anti-Trump, it got a bump coverage, I said, I'm going to write about this. It's not good for the country. It's not good for democracy. It's not good for journalism when reporters are in the tank.
Do you think that they would have done the same thing to your guy, George W. Bush, had social media been as big back then? Because I remember very specifically one day, I used to live on the Upper West, which is, bastion of liberalism, Columbia U. And I remember during the Bush presidency, and it was during the Iraq War, when the media was going crazy all the time, and you were doing the press junkets and all that stuff. I remember walking out, and there was a guy with a table with books, and I remember every single book basically was George W. Bush is the devil, like every single book, and they were all being bought, of course. And had social media existed at the time, my guess is they would have done the exact same thing. It just would have happened earlier. Yeah,
I know you're right about that. And I think one of the points I make in the book is, regardless of what President Trump decides to do, whether he runs or doesn't run, they're going to do it to Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
They're going to do it to Kristi Noem. They're going to do it to Ted Cruz or Tom Cotton. And here's where I have some sympathy for President Trump. What he will tell you is Republicans don't fight hard enough. And that's why he does what he does. And I think there's some merit to that, because he recognized the mainstream media is in the tank. They're out to get him. They're not fair. They're not objective. And so it made him fight twice as hard, 3 times as hard. I wish sometimes he had just gotten it with a little more subtlety or nuance, but that's not his nature. He let it rip everywhere he went. He was a bull in a china shop, and he took a new china shop with him everywhere he went. And so it's a calibration issue. But yeah, Republicans and conservatives need to fight, because my conclusion writing this book is that the media has turned to activists. The mainstream media, and by that I mean the New York Times, the Washington Post, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, they are activists for a cause, and it's a liberal cause. My first chapter is called Original Sin.
Yep.
And I go into how many reporters are Democrats. I hired an opposition research company to go in and pull the voter registration records of the White House press corps. These are public records. Anybody can do it. And they discovered that by a ratio of 12-1,
wow,
the seats at the White House are occupied by registered Democrats.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about the media instead of nonstop yelling, check out our media playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, check out the full episode playlist. They're both right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.